What's up, y'all? It's Jalen back at it again with another video, and I feel really good today. I don't know what it is about today, but I feel really good. I think it's because I took a really good shit probably about an hour ago, and I'm still recovering from it. But anyways, back to this video topic. So the video topic today is going to be, is there a little bit of gaslighting within mental health? Now, what do I mean by this? We've talked about this a little bit with the emphasis on personality disorders, sort of having like particular elements of this, but we're just going to go more so a little bit more broadly. We're going to hone in a little bit more of this video on how that particularly manifests. So, what do I mean by this? We're going to go on personality disorders because I think that's what most of us are familiar with. So, with personality disorders, we have, of course, cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. We got NPD, BPD, antisocial. Most of the time, the cluster B personality disorders are going to be the ones that are talked about the most. But, I think SZPD is getting talked about a little bit more. But let's go over the phenomena of it, okay? Let's start with NPD, okay? Now, NPD is a disorder where, at its heart, you have a personality structure that is defined by trying to maintain a sense of heightened self-esteem and a heightened sense of power within oneself. And usually you go about maintaining this through having a feeling of superiority. However, a lot of times, these more so ends are achieved questionably. They're achieved questionably in the sense to where other people start, to question the narcissist. But not only that, the narcissist questions himself. He knows that the mask that he's putting on is fake, and he questions himself. He might actually not feel like the person that he's masking as, the person that he's expressing, is actually him. Again, real self, false self, all that sorts of stuff. And you also get into the empty core aspect, to where since, all that you've expressed isn't really your true nature, you sort of start to feel like you don't necessarily have a true nature. And, the empty core is something that is within all personality disorders, but that's just how it manifests with a narcissist. The narcissist is never who he is. All he is just this superior individual in everybody else's eyes, but of course the superior individual is not who he actually is. And so it's sort of like a mechanism where he tortures himself constantly, but since the torturing of himself brings him sort of it makes his needs met, and it gives him things that he requires, he doesn't necessarily he doesn't mind it. Now, where does the gaslighting come in? The gaslighting comes in because mental health only goes over what I just described, and even in that regard, it doesn't go knee deep. It only talks about how the narcissist himself is a negative object. It doesn't go over the environment that the narcissist grew up under. It doesn't go over, having to be in an environment where, you might have parents that, only see you as, a trophy. They only see you as a trophy. So you become a trophy. You become this thing that is only good if it's seen as this golden and luxurious object. But of course, the essence of that thing and the craftsmanship of that thing doesn't really matter. You don't really go over the trauma. Like the mental health community, I don't really think goes over the trauma that narcissists, endure. They only go over the fact that, the narcissist causes pain to other people. But another thing that the mental health community doesn't talk about is the societal influence of why narcissists are even within our society in the first place. You have a society that, is all about clicks and likes and, having this positive image on the internet within, your corporate business, having a, nice resume. It's just an appearance. We live in an appearance-based society, and the appearance-based society doesn't care if the appearance itself is true or not. All it cares about is the aesthetics of the appearance. It doesn't care about the essence of the object itself, right? So, when the narcissist pops up, we villainize the narcissist, but at the end of the day, I'm sorry, y'all. That was like a pan or whatever that I put my plant in. It fell over. But anyways, we villainize the narcissist, but at the end of the day, the narcissist was created from somewhere. He didn't just magically pop up out of nowhere. And we go over the symptom, which is the creation of the narcissist, but we don't go over the cause, which is the society and the family that the narcissist grew up under. Another thing is borderlines. A lot of us men, we hate borderlines. I'm not saying, I don't say that to say I hate borderlines. But, when you go on the internet and you go in a BPD video that talks about BPD, you're going to see one male comment in there that says, borderline women are the devil. I was in a relationship with a borderline woman and it was terrible. And that may be so. That's true. I'm not going to discount that person's experience and discount that person's life and say that isn't true. But I don't think that that's the important part. Again, the important part is the cause. What type of society do we live under? What type of family structure do we live under to where these borderline women are popping up? And how can we fix it? Right? I mean, you live in a world where, as a woman, you have to give yourself to a man, and you don't necessarily know. You really have to be very, you have to have a certain amount of discretion because you don't know if the man is shit or not. So if you give yourself to the man and he's not shit, then, you sort of have to take that power back. But then if you take that power back, again, you've sort of been in a state to where you've constantly given yourself to other people. So when you finally have yourself to yourself, you're not really confident with yourself. So you want to give yourself away again. And it's just this constant repeating cycle. But you were taught that, through the family structure. You were taught that through, this is how male and female relations are. And that can go in with the narcissist too. The narcissist is taught that he has to be the perfect father figure, the perfect brother, the perfect son. So, that ties in with the creation of the narcissist. Just the idea is a lot of these things that we consider to be mental illness, we're not prying deep enough into what these things actually are. And, some of that may be unintentional with the layman, but a lot of that stuff is intentional with the people that benefit from the system, because it's the system itself that is creating these problems to begin with. And this is not just personality disorders. This is like depression and anxiety. Okay, What's depression? All right, depression is your serotonin is messed up. All right, so the symptom, people have depression. The cause, messed up serotonin. All right, let's look at the society that we live in, right? You got a work week, you know. If you're a young adult, not only do you have a work week, you go to college, or, you have a work week and you might be on the side, you might be in trade school on the side, or you might be getting certifications on the side. Like, if you're a young adult in the 2020s, you're not just going to work, you're doing something else. You feel me? Like, you're either in college, trade school, getting certifications, trying to establish a hustle. You're doing something else besides just like the job that you're working to survive and get money from. Okay? So that's stress. So your serotonin is already fucked up from the stress. Okay? Then your serotonin is also screwed up from the fact that you sleep only like 2 to 4 hours every day. You don't even get enough sleep. Okay? Then on top of that, most of the time, you're at work or you're sleeping. How long are you outside? How long are you getting sunlight for, right? To synthesize like serotonin again. You're not really getting a whole lot of exposure, right? Okay, so that's another dampening on your production of serotonin. Okay, what else? Do you exercise? Do you do some form of exercise? Right, that increases serotonin. That's real easy to do. A lot of people don't do that, so that's another part of a person's day that they're missing out on that can help out with not being depressed. And then you have, messed up foods. There's no wonder why people are depressed. It's not just the person's fault for being depressed. There's a logical reasoning behind why depression is a thing when you look at the world that we live under. But since the world that we live under benefits certain people, they don't really want it. They don't want to change it. Right? Anxiety. Okay? I mean, is anxiety really that much of a freaking bad phenomena when every time you look on the news, something screwed up is happening? Oh man, the economy's going down. Oh man, somebody got shot. Oh man, this, that, and the third. I mean, it's not even really the news. It could be something immediate. Like, for instance, I was, pretty much in the JPS school district for, first grade on to 12th grade. Once I started to hit like middle school and high school, a lot of the freaking female students that I was in class with have been raped. Of course, I live in the inner city. I live in Jackson. So that shit is a problem. That shit is something that occurs. If you're a freaking female, like, of course you're gonna have anxiety if every other female around you has all of this trauma and shit. You feel me? If you're a man, of course you're gonna have anxiety if all the men around you have been shot, this, that, or the third. Also, men also get raped. But of course, since male rape has a sense of like tokenship, like if you're a little boy and you get raped by like an older woman, it carries like a sense of it carries like a sense of, it's like a token to other males, to where it's like, yeah, you got some, man, that was fucking awesome, even though it's not really that way, even though it's actually something bad. But that's the way that shit is, bro. It's just all of this shit that we're calling mental illness. It's really more so the product of the world that the individual is a part of versus the individual itself. Am I saying that all mental illness is like this? No. Okay, I'm not gonna apply this to autism and freaking those sorts of mental disorders. But some mental disorders, yes, they have more so of a societal origin rather than an origin of, the individual is completely at fault and the individual is completely fucked up. I think that there needs to be more so of an honesty rather than just this constant gaslighting in a sense. But anyways, I wanted to put this video out there just to get the idea into some of y'all's heads, just to have it ruminate. Maybe y'all can think about it and comment or whatever the frick. But as always, this is Jalen signing out. Peace.